Lightning split the mountains as another violent gust slammed against the tiny woodland cottage. Inside, a young healer tightened the final knot around the bleeding shoulder of a massive white wolf. Rainwater dripped from its snow-colored fur onto the wooden floor while the creature fought to remain conscious. It had appeared at her door only moments before collapsing, its body covered in deep claw wounds that no ordinary hunt could have caused. She did not know where it had come from. She did not know why something had chased it through the worst storm Balduran had seen in decades. She only knew that if she closed the door, it would die. Outside, the forest slowly fell silent. Too silent. Then, just before sunrise, one lonely howl echoed across the valley. Another answered, then another, until thousands of glowing eyes appeared through the drifting snow. When Lyra finally reached for the door, every wolf in the kingdom was standing perfectly still. Not attacking, not leaving, waiting. For her. Winter ruled the northern forests with quiet cruelty. The snow reached halfway up the windows of Lyra Ashwood's cottage, muffling every familiar sound until only the wind remained. It hissed through the ancient pines like unseen spirits searching for shelter. Most villagers had locked their doors before sunset. On nights like this, no hunter ventured into the woods, no merchant traveled the mountain roads, and even wolves were said to seek hidden caves beneath the frozen cliffs. Inside the small cottage, warmth came from little more than determination. The fire burned low, fed sparingly by the last stack of dry oak Lyra had gathered before the storm. A kettle of herb broth simmered above the flames, filling the room with the scent of juniper, sage, and pine resin. Bundles of drying plants hung from the ceiling beams beside carefully labeled jars of roots and flowers collected during warmer months. Lyra wrapped another blanket around her shoulders as she sorted medicinal leaves beneath the glow of a single lantern. She had treated 3 children with winter fever earlier that day and an elderly trapper whose hand had frozen while checking his snares. None of them had been able to pay. That was nothing new. People respected her healing. They simply forgot healers also needed food. A violent crash against the outside wall jolted her upright. She frowned. The wind? No. Too heavy. Another thud followed. Closer. Her hand instinctively reached for the iron poker resting beside the fireplace. Not because she believed it would protect her from whatever waited outside, but because courage often borrowed the shape of ordinary objects. She unlatched the door. The storm immediately shoved it inward. Snow exploded across the floor. For a heartbeat, she saw nothing except swirling white. Then the wind shifted. A giant wolf collapsed through the doorway. Its body struck the wooden floor with enough force to shake the cottage. Lyra staggered backward. The animal was enormous, larger than any wolf she had ever treated. Thick white fur concealed powerful muscles, now trembling from exhaustion. Blood stained its left shoulder, while several long gashes crossed its ribs. One ear had been torn nearly in half. Yet none of those injuries held her attention. Its eyes did. Silver. Clear. Intelligent. They met hers without panic. Without aggression. Almost as though asking permission. The wolf tried to stand. Its legs buckled instantly. Lyra lowered the poker. "You've walked farther than you should have," she whispered. The wolf gave no growl. Only a slow blink. Outside, thunder rolled across the mountains. She looked toward the open forest, where darkness swallowed everything beyond the doorway. Whatever had wounded him could still be nearby. For several long seconds, she stood perfectly still. If she let him inside, he might kill her once he regained strength. If she sent him back into the storm, he would never survive until morning. Her parents had once told her that kindness only mattered when it demanded sacrifice. She stepped aside. "Come in." The wolf dragged itself forward another few inches before collapsing completely. Lyra hurried to shut the door against the freezing wind. The cottage fell silent again. She knelt beside the animal, carefully examining each wound. Claw marks. Not bear. Not another wolf. Something sharper. Something trained. She heated water over the fire while crushing herbs into a thick green paste. Every movement remained slow and deliberate. Wild animals could sense fear more quickly than pain. When she touched the torn shoulder, the wolf flinched. "I know," she murmured. "I'm sorry." He watched her every movement. Not once did he bare his teeth. Not once did he snap. When the water was ready, She cleaned every wound despite the blood soaking through her sleeves. The wolf endured the pain in complete silence, though his breathing became uneven. "You've done this before," she said softly. Soldiers breathe like that when they refuse to cry out. The strange thought made her pause. Why would she compare a wolf to a soldier? She shook her head and continued wrapping clean linen around his shoulder. The storm worsened outside. Wind screamed beneath the roof. I struck the windows like handfuls of thrown stones. When the treatment was finished, Lyra stared at the only thick wool blanket left in the cottage. Without it, the coming night would be bitterly cold. The wolf was already shivering. She sighed. "You need it more." She spread the blanket over his body. His ears twitched. For the first time, his expression softened, almost grateful. Lyra smiled despite herself. "You understand more than you should." She returned to the fireplace and divided the remaining broth into 2 bowls. One for herself, one for him. The wolf sniffed cautiously before drinking. His movements were calm, measured, disciplined. Nothing about him felt wild. Hours slipped quietly past. The storm never weakened. Several times Lyra woke from brief moments of sleep to find the wolf awake, watching the fire instead of the door. Watching her, not like a predator, like a guardian making certain she remained safe. Near dawn, the wind finally began to fade. An uneasy silence settled across the forest. Even the trees stopped groaning. The wolf suddenly lifted his head. Every muscle in his body became alert. His ears turned toward the mountains. Then came a single distant howl. Deep, powerful. Another answer from somewhere farther away. Then another. The sound multiplied until the valley itself seemed to sing. Lyra's heartbeat quickened. The white wolf slowly rose to his feet despite his injuries. He looked toward the door, then back at her, almost warning her. Curiosity overcame fear. She reached for the wooden latch. The moment the door opened, icy morning light flooded the cottage. Lyra stepped onto the porch and forgot how to breathe. Across the snowy clearing, between every pine tree, along every hillside, hundreds upon hundreds of wolves stood perfectly still. Gray wolves, black wolves, silver wolves, massive ancient wolves whose scars spoke of countless winters. None snarled, none hunted. Every pair of golden eyes rested on one person, Lyra. The forest had become a silent kingdom, and she was standing at its center. A movement behind her broke the silence. The injured white wolf stepped out of the cottage. Moonlight shimmered across his wounded body. Bones shifted. Light rippled through white fur. Before Lyra could even gasp, the wolf was gone. In his place stood a tall man with silver eyes, dressed in torn black battle leathers. A fresh bandage wrapped around his shoulder exactly where she had stitched the wolf only hours earlier. When he looked at the sea of waiting wolves, every one of them lowered its head. Then the stranger turned to Lyra. "The entire kingdom," he said quietly, "knows what you did for its king." The world seemed to stop breathing. Snow drifted lazily between the towering pines while hundreds of wolves remained perfectly motionless, their enormous bodies forming a living circle around the tiny woodland cottage. Not a single growl disturbed the frozen silence. Their ears stood alert, yet every head remained lowered in quiet respect. Lyra could barely hear her own heartbeat. The man standing behind her should not have existed. Only moments earlier she had wrapped fresh bandages around the shoulder of a wounded white wolf. Now a tall stranger stood where the animal had been, his long black cloak torn to ribbons by battle, silver hair damp with melting snow, and the same intelligent silver eyes studying her with calm restraint. The bandage she had tied still circled his shoulder. The linen was stained with fresh blood. She slowly stepped backward. "You!" Her voice caught in her throat. "We're the wolf." The stranger gave the smallest nod. "I was." His answer carried no pride, only quiet honesty. Lyra stared at him, searching for some sign that this was a trick born from exhaustion. Instead, she found the same steady gaze that had watched her throughout the storm. The same patience, the same calm. Only now it belonged to a man. "You should be afraid," he said. "I am. But you still opened your door." She swallowed. "You were dying." For the first time, something almost resembling a smile touched the corners of his mouth. "You never asked what I was. I asked whether you needed help." His expression grew thoughtful, as though no one had spoken to him that way in years. A low howl echoed from the edge of the clearing. Immediately, every wolf lifted its head. Not toward Lyra, toward the man beside her. He stepped onto the snow despite the pain in his injured shoulder. Without speaking, he raised one hand. Instantly the wolves lowered themselves again. The movement rippled across the valley like falling grain before the wind. Hundreds obeyed. At exactly the same moment, Lyra stared in disbelief. Only one person in Valderin commanded such unquestioned loyalty. The realization settled over her like fresh snowfall. "You," she whispered. "You're the Alpha King." The stranger finally inclined his head. Kalen Draven. The name alone carried the weight of legends. Children throughout the kingdom grew up hearing stories of the king, whose wolf had never lost a battle. The ruler who personally defended the northern borders. The Alpha who walked among ordinary packs without announcing himself. Most believe half those stories exaggerated. Standing beside him now, Lyra suspected they had not exaggerated enough. Before either could speak again, another sound rolled through the forest. Hooves. Many of them. Kalen's eyes sharpened instantly. Inside, his tone remained calm, but it left no room for argument. Moments later, nearly 30 mounted riders emerged between the trees, cloaked in dark blue, trimmed with silver fur. Their armor bore the crest of the Moon Palace. Royal Guards. The captain reined his horse, so suddenly that snow exploded beneath its hooves. His face lost all color. "My king!" Every soldier immediately dismounted. Each dropped to one knee. Relief flooded the clearing. Several looked close to tears. An older warrior with broad shoulders and a scar running across one cheek stepped forward. "General Varek, commander of the Royal Guard." "We searched every valley," he said, lowering his head. "We feared we were too late." Kalen studied him for several quiet seconds before answering. "I survived because someone opened her door." Only then did Varek finally notice Lyra. His grateful expression hardened almost immediately. A lone village healer, standing beside an injured Alpha King, surrounded by hundreds of obedient wolves. Nothing about the scene made sense. His hand drifted unconsciously toward the sword at his side. "Who is she?" "Lyra Ashwood." The answer came from Kalen without hesitation. "The woman who saved my life." Several guards exchanged uneasy glances. One young lieutenant whispered too loudly, "A human healer." Another muttered, "Impossible." Varek's sharp eyes studied the wolves surrounding the cottage. "What concerns me, your majesty," he said carefully, "is that the wolves are not watching you." Everyone turned. He was right. Every wolf remained focused on Lyra. Not aggressively. Almost protectively. Whenever she shifted her weight, dozens of ears moved with her. Whenever she looked toward the forest, countless golden eyes followed her gaze. Kalen noticed it too. His own wolf stirred uneasily beneath his calm expression. Not from jealousy, from curiosity. He had commanded wolves his entire life. He had never seen them behave this way. Varek lowered his voice. "This has never happened. I know. We should move her to the palace immediately." Lyra blinked. "What?" "For your safety," Varek replied. "And for everyone else's. I've done nothing." "Exactly." His eyes remained fixed on the wolves. "Which makes this far more dangerous." Kalen silently watched Lyra instead of answering. She looked overwhelmed, confused, cold. Yet despite everything, her first concern remained practical. "You need your wounds cleaned again," she told him. Several soldiers looked horrified. No one spoke to the Alpha King so directly. Kalen glanced down at the bandage. A thin line of fresh blood had begun soaking through the linen. "You are correct. You reopen the stitches. I expected as much. You'll lose more blood if you continue standing." Without waiting for permission, Lyra stepped forward and adjusted the bandage beneath his torn cloak. Every guard froze. The Alpha King allowed no one to touch him without invitation. Yet he neither stepped away nor objected. Instead, he stood perfectly still while she worked. General Varek watched in stunned silence. There was no fear in her movements, no ambition, no attempt to impress, only quiet competence. Kalen looked down at the healer concentrating on her work. "You refuse rewards." She kept tightening the knot. "I don't help people to collect favors. You don't even know me. I know you were injured." That was enough. She met his silver eyes. It should always be enough. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Kalen slowly nodded. Perhaps. His voice was almost thoughtful. That is why they came. Lyra looked toward the wolves again. They frightened me. They're waiting. For what? Before Kaelin could answer, another rider galloped into the clearing carrying a sealed message marked with the royal crest. He dismounted so quickly he nearly stumbled. My king! He handed the scroll directly to Kaelin. The Alpha broke the seal. His expression remained unreadable as he scanned the contents. Only his eyes changed, growing colder. Someone inside the palace already knew he had survived, which meant whoever had ambushed him had informants within the royal council. The betrayal reached far deeper than he had feared. Far away, hidden behind snow-covered cliffs overlooking the valley, another pair of eyes watched the gathering through a polished bronze spyglass. Lady Selene lowered it slowly. Her lips curved into a faint smile. So, she murmured, the king found the shelter giver. She turned toward the hooded messenger waiting beside her. The prophecy has awakened. The messenger hesitated. What are your orders? Selene's smile disappeared. Erase the woman. As Kaelin and his soldiers prepared to escort Lyra toward the Moon Palace, an elderly royal historian burst through the arriving escort, clutching a weathered scroll so old its edges crumbled in her hands. Breathing heavily, Elder Mira looked from the silent wolves to Lyra, then to the Alpha King. Her face turned pale. I found it, she whispered. The forgotten prophecy. She slowly unrolled the ancient parchment. Across its faded surface, written in silver ink that had survived centuries, were the words, when every wolf chooses one heart above the throne itself, the shelter giver has returned. The road to Moon Palace wound through the snow-covered silver forest, where ancient pines rose like silent guardians beneath a pale winter sky. The storm had passed, leaving behind a world wrapped in crystal-white stillness. Hoofs crunched through fresh snow while the royal escort moved cautiously along the narrow mountain trail. Yet no one spoke, not because of the cold, because of the wolves. Hundreds of them moved through the forest without making a sound. They did not crowd the road or threaten the soldiers. Instead, they traveled between the trees like drifting shadows, always keeping the procession within sight. Sometimes Lyra caught only a glimpse of silver fur before it vanished among the trunks. Other times, she could feel their watchful presence without seeing a single one. General Varric had commanded armies for nearly 30 years. He had fought rogue packs, mountain raiders, and beasts that prowled beyond the northern ice fields. Nothing had unsettled him like this. They're escorting us, one guard whispered. No, another muttered. They're escorting her. Varric said nothing, because he knew they were right. Lyra rode quietly atop the gentle chestnut mare one of the guards had offered her. She had never traveled with a royal escort before. The polished armor, disciplined riders, and enormous wolves surrounding them felt strangely unreal. She glanced toward Kaelin. The Alpha King rode, several lengths ahead on a black stallion whose coat shone like polished obsidian. Though his shoulder remained bandaged beneath his heavy cloak, he sat perfectly straight, betraying little sign of pain. He rarely spoke. He watched. Every ridge, every shadow, every movement in the trees. A king first, a patient second. At midday the company stopped beside a frozen stream to rest the horses. Before any servant could approach, Lyra climbed from her saddle and walked directly toward Kaelin. You've been favoring your left side. He looked mildly surprised. I wasn't aware anyone noticed. You've done it since sunrise. It isn't serious. She folded her arms. That's what every stubborn patient says. For the first time, General Varric almost smiled. Even injured commanders rarely spoke so plainly to their king. Lyra carefully loosened the fresh bandage. The deep claw wound looked cleaner than before, but the skin around it remained inflamed. You reopened it while riding. I expected as much. That doesn't make it wise. Kaelin lowered his eyes briefly. You speak to kings as though titles don't exist. I speak to wounds. Something unreadable passed through his expression. Perhaps amusement, perhaps admiration. I'm beginning to see why the wolves trust you. Lyra paused. They don't know me. Neither did you know me. She had no answer. By late afternoon, the white towers of Moon Palace appeared beyond the cliffs, rising above the forest like silver carved from moonlight itself. Normally the sight inspired relief. Today it inspired whispers. Word had traveled faster than horses. Servants gathered beneath balconies. Children peeked from behind stone pillars. Royal guards abandoned their posts just long enough to glimpse the impossible procession entering the capital. Hundreds of wolves followed quietly behind, not entering the city, waiting beyond its gates, watching. Every citizen stared first at the Alpha King, then at the young healer walking beside him. Questions spread through the crowd before anyone dared ask them aloud. Inside the palace, Elder Mira waited in the Hall of Records. She was older than anyone Lyra had ever met, her silver hair braided beneath dark blue robes embroidered with faded lunar symbols. Dust clung to her sleeves, as though she had spent days buried among forgotten shelves. Without greeting anyone, she carefully placed an ancient scroll upon the stone table. "I found it." Kaelin stepped closer. "The prophecy, the law." She slowly unrolled the brittle parchment. Its faded silver lettering shimmered faintly beneath the firelight. "For nearly 4 centuries," Mira said quietly, "our kingdom has remembered only half the tradition." Lyra leaned closer. The first lines had nearly vanished. Others remained perfectly preserved. Elder Mira began to read. "When winter devours the land and storms hide the moon," her voice echoed softly through the chamber, "any creature bearing the blood of the wolf shall be offered warmth before questions." General Varric frowned. "I've never heard those words." "You weren't meant to." Mira looked at him sadly. "Someone wanted them forgotten." She continued, "For the wolves remember every door opened in mercy, and every door closed in fear." Silence settled across the chamber. Then came the final passage, the oldest, the one written in brighter silver than the rest. "Should every wolf gather before one humble hearth, know that the shelter giver has restored the first promise." Lyra looked up. "I didn't restore anything." "You obeyed it," Mira corrected gently, "without knowing it existed." Kaelin studied the scroll in thoughtful silence. "So this wasn't prophecy?" "No." Mira smiled faintly. "It was memory." She turned another page. "Prophecies tell us what may happen. Laws remind us who we once were." That evening the council gathered. Powerful alphas from neighboring territories filled the circular chamber beneath the moon dome. Some bowed respectfully. Others barely concealed their suspicion. Counselor Darius struck the marble floor with his staff. "We cannot ignore what happened." A murmur spread around the room. Another alpha stood. "The wolves gathered around a common healer. They ignored their own king." "No," Kaelin interrupted calmly. "They protected the woman who protected me." The chamber fell silent. Another counselor narrowed his eyes. "And if this healer now commands their loyalty?" Lyra looked genuinely confused. "I command no one." Several wolves outside the palace gates lifted their heads simultaneously, as though disagreeing. Far beyond the palace walls, Lady Selene watched from the balcony of her private estate. The news had reached her before sunset. She slowly closed the report in her hands. "So," she whispered, "they found the first promise." A servant approached cautiously. "My lady, the relic is ready." Selene turned. In the shadows behind her rested a black stone chest wrapped in silver chains. Ancient runes glowed faintly beneath the frost. Inside lay an object forgotten by history, an artifact capable of twisting the minds of wounded wolves. She rested one hand upon the lid. "If compassion has awakened the old law," her voice became cold, "then fear will bury it again." Night settled peacefully over Moon Palace. Lyra finally returned to the quiet guest chamber prepared for her. For the first time since the storm, she allowed herself to believe she might actually sleep. A soft scratching sound came from beneath the window. She opened it. A tiny white wolf pup climbed clumsily onto the stone ledge. His ears were too large for his head. One paw dragged slightly where an old injury had healed badly. Without hesitation, he walked past every royal guard, curled against Lyra's feet, and fell asleep. Moments later, an arrow shattered the bedroom window. It struck the wall exactly where Lyra's heart had been only seconds before. The arrow struck the stone wall with such force that fragments of marble burst across the chamber. Lyra instinctively threw herself over the sleeping wolf pup. The tiny creature startled awake with a frightened whine but did not run. Instead, he pressed himself against her as another sound echoed through the room. The crack of breaking glass. A second arrow flashed through the shattered window. Before it could reach her, a blur of black crossed the chamber. Steel rang against steel. The arrow split cleanly in half. Kalen landed between Lyra and the window, his sword still humming from the strike. His breathing remained calm, but his silver eyes had become frighteningly cold. "Stay behind me." The words were quiet. They carried no panic, only certainty. Royal guards flooded the corridor a heartbeat later. General Varek reached the broken window first. "Seal the eastern walls." His voice thundered through the palace. "No one leaves." Boots pounded across marble corridors as soldiers scattered in every direction. Kalen did not move. His gaze searched the darkness beyond the window. The assassin had already vanished. Only drifting snow remained. Slowly, he lowered his sword. "Are you hurt?" Lyra blinked, still holding the trembling wolf pup. "No. You covered him first." She looked down at the frightened animal curled against her chest. He couldn't protect himself. Kalen glanced at the pup, then back at Lyra. "And yet," he murmured, "he never doubted you would." Within the hour, Moon Palace had transformed into a fortress. Torches burned along every wall. Guards doubled their patrols. Messengers rode through the night toward neighboring territories carrying sealed royal orders. Inside the council hall, tension hung heavier than the winter air. General Varek placed the recovered arrow upon the stone table. Its black shaft was unlike any weapon forged in Valderin. Silver symbols spiraled along its length. Elder Myra's face darkened. "I know these markings." Kalen looked up. "The Shadow Foundries." Mira nodded. "They disappeared nearly 300 years ago." "They didn't disappear." General Varek folded his arms. "They were financed." The chamber fell silent. Someone within the kingdom had secretly rebuilt an outlawed order of assassins. Someone wealthy enough to hide it for years. Council members exchanged uneasy glances. No one dared accuse another openly. Not yet. Morning arrived beneath a sky of brilliant blue. For the first time in days, sunlight touched the palace gardens. Lyra sat beside the frozen reflecting pool, carefully changing the bandage wrapped around the little wolf pup's injured paw. The pup watched every movement with complete trust. "You've had this injury for months." She smiled softly. "And you've been pretending it doesn't hurt." The little wolf nudged her hand. A quiet laugh escaped her. It was the first genuine laugh she had managed since the storm. Nearby, Kalen observed without interrupting. He had spent years judging people by how they treated powerful warriors. Lyra judged no one that way. Kings, children, injured wolves. Her kindness never changed. General Varek approached quietly. "My king." Kalen turned. "The northern alphas have arrived." "So soon?" They insisted. Kalen followed him toward the great courtyard. Lyra remained behind. She preferred the company of the pup. One after another, the territory alphas entered the palace. Each commanded powerful packs that had rarely agreed on anything for generations. Old rivalries divided them. Border disputes, ancient blood feuds, broken treaties. Some had not stood in the same place peacefully for decades. Yet something strange happened as each alpha crossed the palace gates. Their wolves refused to remain beside them. Instead, every single wolf walked calmly across the courtyard, past the assembled rulers, past the royal guards, past the servants frozen in disbelief, until they reached Lyra. Within minutes, she found herself surrounded by wolves of every size and color. None demanded attention. Some simply lay near her feet. Others rested beneath nearby trees while quietly watching her. The little white pup wagged his tail proudly as though introducing his new family. A deep silence spread through the courtyard. One elderly alpha removed his gloves slowly. "I've lived 70 winters." His voice carried across the gathering. "I have never seen wolves ignore territory." Another nodded. They should be fighting. They should be defending their own alphas. Instead, they had chosen peace, because one healer had once opened a door during a storm. Kalen watched the impossible scene unfold. His wolf sensed no challenge, no attempt to replace him, only recognition, respect, something larger than rank, something older than crowns. Late that afternoon, the captured arrow finally yielded its secret. Royal trackers found fresh footprints leading toward abandoned tunnels beneath the eastern cliffs. Kalen assembled a small party, General Varek, several trusted guards, and despite every protest, Lyra, "You should stay inside the palace," Kalen said. "The assassins are hunting you. Then they'll simply keep coming." She met his gaze steadily. If I'm the reason, I should help end it. Varric frowned. With respect, Lady Lyra, this isn't a healer's work. She looked toward the little wolf pup now standing beside her boot. It became my work the moment someone tried to kill innocent wolves. Kalen studied her quietly. He saw no recklessness, only resolve. Finally he nodded. You stay beside me. I wasn't planning otherwise. A faint smile almost appeared before he caught himself. The abandoned tunnels stretched deep beneath the mountain. Cold air drifted through ancient stone passages carved long before the kingdom existed. Faded wolf carvings cover the walls. Lyra brushed snow from one symbol. It isn't decoration. Elder Mira knelt beside it. No, it's a warning. She translated the ancient script. Werewolves walk together, kingdoms endure. Further ahead, the tunnel suddenly widened into a forgotten, ceremonial chamber. Broken statues lay scattered across the floor. At its center stood a stone altar. Upon it rested dozens of black collars, forged from silver and iron. Lyra frowned. What are these? Kalen's expression hardened. I've seen them once before. General Varric picked one up carefully. It smells wrong. Elder Myra's face lost all color. They were used during the First Civil War, to enslave wounded wolves. Silence swallowed the chamber. Someone had been rebuilding weapons that should never have existed again. Then, a sharp whistle echoed through the darkness. Dozens of hooded assassins emerged from hidden passages. Steel flashed beneath the torchlight. Their leader smiled beneath a black mask. We don't want the king. His sword slowly pointed toward Lyra. We want the woman. Before the assassins could attack, every torch inside the ancient chamber suddenly flickered out. Darkness swallowed the tunnels. Then came a sound. Not one howl. Not two. Hundreds. Echoing through the mountain itself. The assassins' confident smiles disappeared. Something far larger than soldiers was coming. And it was answering only one call. The mountain answered. One howl became 10. 10 became 100. Within seconds the forgotten tunnels shook as countless voices echoed through the ancient stone, so deep and powerful that dust drifted from the cracked ceiling. The assassins tightened their grip on their weapons, their confidence dissolving beneath the sound. Then the darkness moved. Golden eyes appeared beyond the tunnel entrance. Another pair, then dozens. Huge wolves emerged silently from every passage, their white breath curling through the cold air. Some carried scars earned in forgotten wars. Others were young, lean hunters from distant territories. Packs that had hated one another for generations now stood shoulder to shoulder without a single growl between them. They had not come for the Alpha King. Every wolf looked only at Lyra. The masked commander laughed nervously. So this is the famous shelter giver. He slowly drew a curved blade from his belt. You've become a dangerous woman without lifting a sword. Kalen stepped forward. Your fight is with me. The assassin shook his head. You still don't understand, Your Majesty. He pointed toward Lyra. Kings can be replaced. Symbols cannot. Before another word could be spoken, he gave a sharp signal. Steel flashed. The chamber exploded into chaos. Royal guards met assassins head-on as swords clashed beneath the torchlight. Sparks burst against the ancient stone walls, while echoes of battle rolled through the mountain. General Varric fought like a man half his age, driving back 2 attackers before turning to protect Elder Mira. Kalen moved through the battle with frightening precision. Every strike was measured, every movement economical. He wasted no strength. Within moments 3 assassins lay unconscious, their weapons scattered across the floor. But more kept coming. Too many. Their objective was never victory, only distraction. The commander slipped through the fighting, racing toward the black stone altar hidden behind the chamber. Lyra saw him first. Kalen! The Alpha turned. Too late. The masked commander slammed both hands onto the ancient chest. The silver chains shattered. A wave of icy darkness erupted through the chamber. It rolled across the floor like black mist before vanishing into the surrounding tunnels. Silence followed. Then, the first howl came. Not a howl of loyalty, a howl of pain. Outside the mountain, wolves began crying out across the valley. One by one their voices changed. Warm, familiar calls twisted into deep, tortured growls. General Varric looked toward the tunnel entrance in horror. The relic! Elder Myra's face turned pale. They activated it. Kalen gritted his teeth. The moon shackles. Lyra looked at him. What does it do? It doesn't control wolves. Mira answered quietly. It controls fear. The ground trembled. Huge paws thundered toward the chamber. A massive gray wolf burst inside. Foam dripped from its mouth. Its golden eyes had turned completely black. Another followed, then 5 more. Each wore the same expression. Confused, terrified, as though trapped inside their own minds. The royal guards instinctively raised their weapons. Hold! Kalen's command echoed through the chamber. They're victims. One young soldier hesitated. A crazed wolf lunged toward him. Without thinking, Lyra ran forward. Lyra! Kalen shouted. She ignored him. Instead of drawing a weapon, she stepped directly between the wolf and the terrified guard. The enormous beast skidded to a halt only a few feet away. Its jaws remained open. Its entire body trembled violently. Fear, not hatred. Lyra slowly lowered herself to one knee. Everyone stared in disbelief. What are you doing? General Varek whispered. She spoke softly to the wolf. I know. Her voice barely rose above the echoes of battle. You're frightened? The wolf snarled. Its muscles tightened, ready to leap. Lyra did not move. What animals hurt? She whispered. They stopped, recognizing the hands trying to help. Very slowly, she extended her empty hand. No weapon, no threat, only trust. For one endless heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the wolf whimpered, a sound so small that many almost missed it. Its ears lowered. The blackness clouding its eyes began to fade. It took one uncertain step forward, then rested its head against Lyra's hand. The chamber fell completely silent. One by one, the remaining wolves stopped fighting. They watched the first wolf calm beneath the gentle touch of a woman who had once offered shelter to a stranger during a storm. The relic's power fed on terror. Lyra gave it something stronger. Safety. Around the chamber, more wolves slowly approached her. She remembered the ancient words Elder Mira had read only yesterday. Any creature bearing the blood of the wolf shall be offered warmth before questions. Closing her eyes, Lyra repeated the forgotten oath aloud. Her voice echoed gently through the mountain. I offer shelter before judgment. I offer kindness before fear. No wolf stands alone. The ancient carvings lining the walls shimmered with pale moonlight. The relic vibrated violently upon the altar. Hairline cracks spread across its black surface. Lady Selene stepped from the shadows at the rear of the chamber, her elegant silver cloak untouched by the battle. So, she said coldly, the stories were true. Kalen immediately moved between her and Lyra. You orchestrated everything. Selene smiled. I restored balance. You murdered your own people. I protected bloodlines. She looked toward the wolves, gathering peacefully around Lyra. They should obey strength. They're choosing compassion. They're choosing weakness. Kalen's voice became harder than steel. No, they're choosing someone who never asked to rule them. Selene reached for the relic. If I cannot command them, she poured every remaining ounce of power into the artifact. The chamber shook violently. The relic screamed. Then, it shattered. Moonlight burst through every crack, flooding the ancient hall in silver radiance. The black mist vanished. Across the kingdom, wolves lifted their heads beneath the night sky. Their eyes cleared. Their fear disappeared. One enormous howl rolled across the mountains, then another, until every pack in Valderin answered together. Not in pain, in freedom. The surviving assassins dropped their weapons. Lady Selene slowly fell to her knees. For the first time in years, she realized she had already lost, not because Kalen had defeated her army, but because kindness had united what fear never could. Outside the mountain, wolves from every territory gathered beneath the winter moon. As Lyra stepped into the open air beside Kalen, thousands of wolves looked toward her. Then, without command, without signal, every wolf in Valderin bowed its head. An overwhelming silence spread across the valley. Kings, soldiers, council members, even the rival alphas watched in stunned disbelief as every wolf remained kneeling before one humble healer. Kalen looked at the ancient packs, then at Lyra. Quiet understanding settled in his silver eyes. The prophecy was never asking who would wear the crown, he said softly. It was asking who the wolves would choose. The wolves remained kneeling. No command had been given. No alpha had lowered his hand. No ancient ritual had begun. Yet from the oldest gray wolf, standing atop the northern ridge, to the smallest white pup curled beside Lyra's boots, every wolf in the valley bowed its head before the young healer. The winter wind drifted quietly through their fur, carrying thousands of silent breaths across the mountains. No one dared disturb the moment. General Varric slowly removed his helmet. One after another, the royal guards followed his example. Soon the rival alphas lowered their heads as well. Not to Lyra, to the truth they had witnessed. Kaelin looked across the endless sea of wolves before turning toward the woman whose only weapon had ever been kindness. He spoke softly, but every person in the valley heard him. Today, the wolves have judged us all. Lady Selene was taken back to Moon Palace in iron chains. For the first time in decades, the council hall opened its doors to every territorial alpha instead of only the royal council. No secret meetings. No hidden votes. No whispered bargains behind locked doors. Kaelin wanted the truth spoken beneath open light. The great chamber filled before noon. Nobles occupied one side, pack leaders the other. Royal guards lined the marble walls. Even Elder Mira, despite her age, stood proudly beside the ancient archives she had carried from the Hall of Records. At the center of the chamber stood the shattered remains of the moon shackles. Their black stone had turned to ordinary dust. Lady Selene faced the assembly without lowering her eyes. "You believe you've won." Her voice remained calm. "The kingdom has always belonged to the strongest." Kaelin descended from the throne. For the first time since becoming king, he stood not above his people, but among them. "You believed strength meant control." He looked toward Lyra. "I learned strength begins with trust." Selene laughed bitterly. "Trust makes rulers weak." "No." Elder Mira stepped forward, carrying the ancient scroll. "It makes kingdoms endure." She carefully unrolled the brittle parchment before the assembled court. For centuries, only fragments of the first promise had survived. Now every forgotten line was read aloud. Her steady voice echoed beneath the great dome. "When storms darken the moon, offer shelter before judgment. Offer warmth before fear. The wolves shall remember every open door, long after kings are forgotten." Silence settled over the chamber. Many of the older alphas closed their eyes. Some quietly wept, not because the words were new, because somewhere deep inside them, they sounded familiar, as though their ancestors had whispered them beside winter fires long ago. Mira lowered the scroll. The prophecy was never about crowning a queen. She looked toward Lyra. It was about reminding us who we were. Over the following days, the kingdom began to change. The secret prisons beneath the eastern cliffs were emptied. Every surviving captive wolf was healed and returned to its territory. The shadow foundries were dismantled stone by stone. Their weapons were melted into farming tools, bridge supports, and hearth iron, so they could never again be used to enslave the innocent. General Varric personally oversaw the work. "This steel," he told the soldiers, "will protect lives instead of taking them." No one argued. Despite everything, Lyra struggled with the attention. Everywhere she walked, people stopped to thank her. Children left woven flowers outside her chamber. Villagers traveled for days simply to glimpse the healer whose kindness had united the packs. None of it felt comfortable. One quiet evening, she slipped away from the palace gardens and returned alone to Ashwood Cottage. Snow still covered the roof. The little lantern beside the doorway still hung where she had left it. Nothing had changed. And yet, everything had. She stepped inside. The room smelled faintly of pine, herbs, and smoke. Her worn wooden chair remained beside the fireplace. The old kettle rested where she had forgotten it. She smiled through quiet tears. "This is still home." A familiar whimper answered her. Ash, the little white wolf pup, came tumbling out from beneath the table, far bigger than he had been only weeks before. He threw himself against her legs, so enthusiastically that she nearly lost her balance. Laughing, she knelt and buried her face in his thick white fur. "I missed you too." Another shadow appeared in the doorway. Kaelin. He had come without soldiers, without royal banners, without ceremony. Only a simple dark traveling cloak rested across his shoulders. "You always find this place." Lyra smiled. "You tracked me." He glanced toward Ash. "I had help." The little wolf wagged his tail proudly. For a while neither of them spoke. The fire crackled softly between them. Outside, snowflakes drifted lazily beneath the evening sky. Finally, Kalen broke the silence. When I first woke in this cottage, he looked around the small room. I thought I had survived because fate was merciful. He met her eyes. I know now it was because you were. Lyra looked down at her hands. I only opened a door. You changed a kingdom. I didn't. You reminded it. His words settled gently into the quiet room. There was no grand declaration, no royal proposal, only two people who had walked through fear together, who had earned one another's trust one choice at a time. Kalen slowly extended his hand. Valderin needs its guardian. Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Then she placed her hand in his, not because prophecy demanded it, not because wolves expected it, because she had chosen, just as he had. Outside the cottage, the first stars appeared above the mountains. A long, peaceful howl echoed through the valley. Then another. Soon every wolf answered, not as soldiers, not as subjects, as family. Spring arrived where winter had once ruled. The forests of Valderin filled with green once more, and the rivers carried melted snow toward the distant sea. Travelers crossing the kingdom began telling the same story in every village. If a wolf ever appeared at your door during the fiercest storm, you did not ask whose pack it belonged to. You opened your home. The old storm shelter oath became law once again. Every household kept a lantern burning through winter nights. Every child learned that courage did not begin with a sword. It began with kindness offered when no one was watching. Years later, children would gather outside Moon Palace to watch wolves and village pups playing together beneath the blooming pines while Ash, now a magnificent white wolf, watched over them with patient golden eyes. From the palace balcony, Lyra and Kalen stood side by side. Neither wore expressions of triumph, only quiet gratitude. Far beyond the palace gates, another storm gathered over the northern mountains. On a lonely forest road, a weary traveler spotted an exhausted wolf struggling through the snow. He remembered the oldest promise in the kingdom. He smiled, and before the wolf could even reach the porch, the door opened,